Hi all, welcome. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes for people to join, and we'll get underway. Present the slides. Hopefully everyone can see that on the page. We'll get underway. We've got quite a few things to cover, so we'll get underway bang on time. So, like I said, thank you everyone for joining today. We give some quick introductions to ourselves, and then we'll get underway. So today we actually have a change in the lineup. So to introduce my colleague Renaud, who will be covering Carsten. Unfortunately, he has been delayed by weather, so he's stuck in Spain. So unfortunately, he can't make it for the webinar today. But we have Renaud is our head of strategy, who's going to speak through the first part of the presentation. Renaud, I don't know if you can give a quick introduction.
Yes, sure. So thank you everyone for attending today. As a forward, we have a couple of slides that we can go with. Jack.
And that is not Renaud, but there we go. Introduction. Okay.
So here we go. So we are the Gatling Group, which is now 30 years old. The Channel Tunnel opened 30 years ago, and we are celebrating this year this major milestone. And if we look back at the past, on the next slide, we see that the opening of the tunnel has dramatically changed the trade landscape between Europe and UK, and we see that the volumes of the opening up a new road has significantly increased the volumes. So in this chart, you see that RoRo grew at a much faster rate than the GDP, especially after the opening of the Channel Tunnel. So the Channel Tunnel and the group has always been a pioneer, I'd say, and leading the way forward with new solutions and new services to improve trade. We go to the next slide. We see that the Brexit has also been a major change in the business of the group. UK is now trading less than the other countries, so not only due to the economic downturn, but structurally speaking, the country is trading less than the other countries, in spite of the implementation of the trade agreement. And one of the key challenges for the group is that there are non-trade barriers that remain, and that we want to bring more simplicity, so that it's not only an issue, but also an opportunity to bring back more trade and more flows between the EU and UK. The positive thing is that we see somehow, so the economic situation and the trade has been, I would say, undermined by the economic situation. The good thing is that now we see a light at the end of the tunnel with a forecasted growth in the UK and EU, which hopefully will drive also more trade. The recovery of the economy is also driven by the slowdown of the inflation that will remove a bit a burden on the cost and on the bottom line of the businesses, and which will also drive demand and consumption. So we are quite optimistic regarding the recovery of the economies and also the cross-border trade. Another key element that is impacting our business is the fact that there is new laws that have been taken that will impact the cross-channel operators. In the UK, it's the Seafarer Wages Act that has been decided in 2023. In France, there is a similar regulation that just came into force, and the last decree for implementation was signed 2 weeks ago. So we see that things will change. It will also change the competitive landscape between the operator, and it will be somehow positive for an operator like Eurotunnel, which has been consistently complying with the law, paying decent wages, etc. So new changes and positive in terms of competitions and market dynamics. If we go to the next slide, we see that there is another key element that we want to highlight regarding Eurotunnel is that the implementation of the European entry-exit system is coming soon and will kick in at the end of the year in October. We see that some of the other players on the channel are a bit concerned about this because it might generate congestion. At Eurotunnel, there has been some strong investment to anticipate this, and we are pretty confident to say that Eurotunnel will be ready. Also, one of the characteristic point is that at Eurotunnel, the controls, which will concern only a small minority of the truck drivers, will be implemented in dedicated lanes, so no congestion from cars or families that might risk to block the trucks. And Eurotunnel will manage it with a dedicated system and digital tools using what we call a digital twin to ensure fluid management of the traffic. Last part of this introduction is regarding the new services and offering that are now available at Eurotunnel. A lot of these new developments were somehow driven by Brexit, which created a new paradigm. In terms of transport offering, the group is now offering unaccompanied trailer services on the tunnel. We have also launched a first priority service to offer even faster crossing time. And on the next slide, we are also improving the services for the drivers with, in particular, the secured lorry park in Calais. That is a great success, especially to offer decent working condition to the drivers. We are also taking the driver welfare to the next level with a loyalty program with a lot of activities proposed to the drivers, and also with improving the onboard experience, for instance, with the coffee machines that are now back on our services. So that's a bit an update on the group and Eurotunnel. Now I will hand over to Jack, which will take the lead on the core of the presentation, which is the border challenges that are coming ahead and how to deal with it. Up to you, Jack.
Thanks, Renan. Thanks for that. Just to give I guess a very quick introduction to myself before we get into it. So, of course, I'm Jack Fuller. I'm the Customers Advisory at Sherpass and GetLink. So previously, I actually worked as a HMC officer. The very start of my career as a HMC officer, and unfortunately, I turned to the dark side and joined Big Four. So I was a customs consultant for a good 5-6 years. My last position just before joining GetLink was the trade compliance manager, the lead trade compliance manager at Amazon, and that certainly had a lot of challenges. So I'm hopefully able to give you some key insights into the regulation changes upcoming, and hopefully be able to answer any Q&As you have at the end of the presentation. So I'll start somewhere pretty simple. So we're going to start sort of the before and after Brexit. Probably a lot of you have seen this before, so don't worry, it gets into more detail. But essentially, customs checks was non-existent before Brexit. Moving goods to London to Paris was like moving goods from London to Scotland. There was essentially no difference except for just the transportation requirements. Of course, now today, we're now a few years ahead of time. All the additional formalities to move goods between the UK and the EU have now been put into place. So this includes not only customs formalities, as you know, your import and export requirements, as well as your transiting goods. You now have your sanitary and photosanitary formalities, which we're going to cover in a bit more detail. You've got additional border crossing formalities, so your GMR and your safety security declarations. There's also, of course, inspections, risk assessments on goods moving between borders, increased transportation delays due to this. But also in addition as well, you've got, away from the customs formalities, you've actually got the customs clearance itself. There's a wider element to the customs clearance, not just in terms of submitting imports and exports, but how traders and how companies actually undertake commerce between the UK and the EU. A great example of that is if EU companies working on a DDP Incoterm, delivered duty paid. Pre-Brexit, that was completely fine. There was no requirement to import, no requirement to pay duties and VAT. However, post-Brexit, there now becomes the element of, does the exporter have the requirement or the ability to provide a DDP service? Can they import in the UK? Can they pay duty in the UK? Are they established for VAT purposes? Are they established for customs purposes? So there's a whole layer of commercial element there in terms of how that's arranged for customs. So that's a very simple before and after of Brexit. I'm sure you've all seen that before. So moving on to the regulation timeline. So we're just going to start with what's happened today and happening in the very near future. So of course, we had the border target operating model was delivered last year, 29th of August. There's multiple different versions of this going through, I think, late 22 to early 23. But this is finally published at the end of August, giving us a detailed timeline of the introduction of SPS checks and safety and security checks. But we're going to go into that in a bit more detail. The first transitional phase for the EU CBAM come into place in October, and we're going to be seeing the first quarterly returns in January. Again, we'll touch on that in a little bit more detail. Not too much detail with the CBAM; it's quite a complicated area, but hopefully I'll give you some insight into that. 31st of January was the first deadline within the border trade operating model. This is the mandatory IPAF declarations and health certificates of medium and high risk goods. 7th of March, there was some new criteria published this month about the requirements for CHED products. So I encourage anyone to read up on that. And of course, in a month's time, we have the establishment of the physical and identity import controls for medium risk goods. Again, we're going to go over all this in a bit more detail, but let's just give you an overview of what's happened up to today and to the near future. To give you an idea on the busy period ahead, so all the new regulations that are going to come in. So on the 3rd of June, we have ICS2 phase 3 going live for maritime. So we'll pick up that in a little bit more detail, but quite a significant impact on the way we import goods, especially for maritime in the first sense. 1st of July, NCTS 5 goes live. So this is the new computerized transit system, the new version. So there's going to be additional requirements to import in via transit. The EU EES goes live. So as Renault picked up on there, that goes live in October this year. 31st of October is the third deadline within the border. I'm going to just call it BTOM. So that's the 31st of October. That's when our safety and security declarations become mandatory. And then moving into next year, we have some additional requirements probably to be aware of. So we have the envelope logistic, which becomes mandatory. This is essentially the French GMR. where it allows you to group multiple MRNs into one what they call envelope. So this is a French system. So that's a very important point to note when we're moving goods from the UK to the EU. 1st of April 2025, we have the ICST Phase 3 go live for Ro-Ro and unaccompanied trailers. So Phase 3, we'll go into this very much later into the slides, but Phase 3 is not simply just go live straight away. There's multiple transitions and being applied for different modes of transport. So the Ro-Ro and the unaccompanied traits go live in April. And then by the end of 2025, we are looking at potentially implementing the UK ETA, which is the electronic digitalized format for border movements and immigration. So that's the UK version essentially of EES. And hopefully, although I'm not entirely confident, hopefully the greater introduction of the 2025 border strategy, which the BTOM falls under, but hopefully we'll see more on that front. So that's the regulations up to end 2025 in a nutshell. So I'm going to move more on to the specifics of the couple of topics I covered in the timeline. And I'll just encourage anyone, feel free to post questions into the Q&A and we'll pick them up at the end of the presentation. Hopefully be able to answer them. If not, we'll take them away and come back to you. But yeah, please feel free to put them in as we go through the presentation. So first, we're going to talk about customs procedures and processes. So just to give you some recent updates that some may not be aware of. So we have a change in from a UK export perspective. We actually have a change in the way HMC are actually going to enforce penalties on origin declarations for exporters. And this has never been done before. HMC generally never issue fines for exporters because there's not a fiscal liability for an exporter, especially for origin. So where you have an importer in France, for example, declaring origin and to reduce their duty via an FTA, many HMC are now requiring UK exporters to ensure that the origin declaration they provide is accurate and correct. The liability always generally fell on the importer, and then the importer's authorities. The EU authority would contact UK authority, and then they'd go down the chain of origin to ascertain that's correct. However, now where this is now incorrect, there's now a £1,000 fine. This is capped at £1,000. So this is initially just being introduced for a couple of countries, so just Canada, Turkey, New Zealand, Iceland. You've got the EFTA countries and the CPTPP. It's important to note it's only for known and material errors. Now, there is a standard for HMRC to identify if something is known or a material error. But again, when it comes to actually applying how you can actually prove that is difficult. HMRC find it very hard to prove that it was a deliberate attempt. So it'll be interesting to see how HMRC actually apply this change in policy. The next point is the EU CBAM. So again, not going to go into loads of detail about the EU CBAM. It's quite a complex part of EU regulation. But this went live on the 1st of October 2023. And this initially applies to imports of certain goods, certain products and precursor products. And it's really just aiming at carbon intensive processes as well as sort of high risk goods for carbon leakage. So it's quite important that it's quite important for UK exporters to be aware of the EU CBAM requirements, because it's going to require some collaboration in order for your EU importers to meet their obligations. So quite simply, you provide quarterly reporting to a CBAM registry. This will provide by product by carbon unit, and if there is deemed to be a carbon leakage or high intensive carbon, then there is an additional levy placed on the movement of them goods. So there's essentially an additional tax for high carbon processing. The collaboration is important. You know, the information you provide, or the information that a UK exporter will provide to the EU importer, will be used to calculate them embedded emissions in the products. So that's very important to notice. It's really important as well to be aware of the scope of the precursor goods. So it's not always finished products or transformed products. It can be products that are incorporated into a larger finished good that can fall under the scope of CBAM. So you know, UK exporters will provide in parts or parts for processing, also potentially fall under this regulation. It's a fast evolving space, CBAM, is being introduced into the UK in 2027 is the aim. And the full transition in the EU is not until around 2026. So this first transitional phase is really a test case for how it's going to be regulated. So it's going to be, I'm sure in the next couple of years, it's going to be evolving very, very quickly. And one point to note there as well, 1/3 of the total value of UK goods exported to the EU could be affected by EU CBAM. So it's very important to understand the obligations. On to the next slide, moving on to the UK import changes. So there's been a slight change to the way supplementary declarations are going to be managed in the UK. So this is actually being introduced as of April. So in a couple of days, this is going to go live. So your April imports can now benefit from these different changes for your May returns. So in case anyone's not aware on the call, essentially a supplementary declaration or a simplified declaration is where you provide simplified information at the border, at the point you cross the border. And then you provide a supplementary declaration, which is the additional information that would be required on a full declaration at a later date. So it allows them goods to move freely and quickly with limited data at the initial point of entry. So traditionally, the supplementary declarations and the final supplementary declarations were to be submitted on the 4th of the following month. This has now been moved to the 10th and the 11th. So this is an important point to note. The changes, this is actually an extension from when you can submit your supplementary declarations. One important point as well is the due deferment payment date is moving from the 15th to the 16th of the month. Now that's not a significant change in dates. However, previous clients I've worked with, as well as working with the due deferment account at Amazon, there's normally set accounting processes in place to account for direct debits or bank transfers on the 15th. So even that 1-day change can actually have an effect on how sort of internal processes are undertaken with finance departments. So it's an important point to note. It's only 1 day, but it's important to make sure the internal accounting processes are up to date. One quite large change, I would say, is the extension of the aggregation of supplementary declarations. So at the moment, you can aggregate supplementary declarations over 1 day or 10 days. So you can add them all into a file and send them to HMRC. They're actually now extending this to monthly. This is quite a large change. There's been quite a lot of talk around moving goods towards a self-assessment, moving to self-assessments. This is sort of the first step for HMRC to move to actually for traders to aggregate and provide monthly returns to HMRC. So quite a significant change, I would say. Be interesting to see where they take that change and whether they expand it further into full declarations. So the next part, I'm going to talk about the photosanitary SBS goods, which have been listed in the BTOM. So just to give a quick update or a quick overview, I guess, of the BTOM. So the border target operating model is essentially a plan developed by the government. It's to simplify and to improve the processes for importing goods in the UK. That's the aim of the border trade operating model. And there's 4 key areas of focus. One is to simplify the customs processes, or attempt to at least simplify the customs processes. 2 is to introduce new post-Brexit safety and security controls. They're going to be introducing this via the GB safety and security declarations. Also to introduce new SPS controls, of course, post-Brexit regulations. They want to put that in place to address UK health and UK environmental concerns. And then lastly, as well, is also to harmonise the processes and the documentation between SPS, customs, and border controls. So it's really looking at a comprehensive, as I put there, comprehensive target and risk-based approach. It's trying to be, the border operator is trying to be less of a bother to UK traders as possible. It's purely applying documentary and risk-based approach in order to identify goods that need to be checked at the border. They're trying to simplify this and digitalize the information. So they're trying to optimize data use for this. So, for example, the ambition to create a single trade window falls under sort of the BTOM category, where essentially you have a single trader interface where you can upload all your data for one movement across multiple different departments. So, for example, with SPS goods, you've got DEFRA, APHA, and you've got HMRC for imports, and of course you've got Border Force for the enforcement at the border. Trying to bring that all into one and digitalize that data and make it more simplified is the target. One important development in the BTOM is this new trusted trader scheme they call the ATTS. So this is mainly for SPS goods, as well as sort of goods that are going to be potentially taken to a border control point. So this is, I'm going to move into the next slide and explain why it's so important, but this is quite important for anyone who does lots of trade with SPS goods, especially for medium risk goods. And actually, I'll pick that up in the next slide, and I'll be able to show you that. In order to apply for the Trusted Trader Scheme, you actually have to be an established UK business, history of good compliance, and strong end-to-end supply chain controls. So failure to comply with the BTOM regulations, this is not guidance. It is a regulation. It is enforced, and from what we understand, it's going to be enforced very strictly. So, you know, just like any other customs regulation or border regulation, if you don't comply with the BTOM regulations, you have risk of goods being held at border control points, significant and regular transportation delays via physical identity checks, being held at the port control, being sent to a border control point. It has a wider impact as well on your business risk rating. If you're not, I had very much this experience with Amazon, where you have yearly reviews or bi-yearly reviews where you're looking at your business risk rating, and customs is a large part of that. So you have your corporate tax, customs, employment taxes, VAT, etc. Where you're failing in your customs compliance, you can actually bring your entire business risk rating down. So it's important to make sure that doesn't happen. And then, sort of worst case, if you're not complying with the new regulations regularly, you may even lose the ability to import SPS products. And this actually applies not only to the import, but also the production of SPS products as well. If you're really relying on a scheme like inward processing, for example, if you're non-compliant in one area of customs, that affects all your other areas of customs. So if you're non-compliant with SPS checks, it could affect your inward processing authorization. So it got quite serious not to comply. So very important to understand your obligations. So next, just going to pick up into the key dates. Again, not going to go into this too much because we picked this up in the timeline. But the 31st of January was the introduction of the export health certificates for medium risk animal products, as well as high risk products for feed of non-animal origin. The upcoming introduction in April is what I'd say is the most potentially disruptive change. So this is going to be the mandatory document checks and physical checks of high risk goods, as well as the introduction of these checks for medium risk goods as well on a percentage risk basis. It also does remove the health certification and checks for low risk animal products, so there is some level of a reduction there for some importers. But again, very important date to note if you're moving SPS goods. And then finally, we have the introduction of the safety and security declarations in October, which we'll go into in a bit more detail. So the risk categories. So again, we have low, medium. So this is low products, which is your processed products, canned products, etc., etc. Now, for photosanitary requirements, like I said, no health certificates has been introduced. There is a pre-notification, but it's simplified for low. And there's going to be no document identification or physical control checks going to be put in place for that. Oh, sorry, wrong button. Your medium goods, so your meat products, raw products, frozen products, fish products as well. Mandatory requirement to provide a sanitary certificate. A full pre-notification is also required, as well as a 100% documentary control check. Now, going back to the authorised of the Trusted Trader Scheme, where you see here there's a percentage on the percentage of checks for identification and physical control. Well, this is very much dependent on, one, the information you're providing to the authorities, and two, as well, the status of your authorised trader. If you are a trusted trader, you're looking towards lower to the 1%. This is mainly because when you're applying to become a trusted trader, you're providing them with the assurance that you have a full end-to-end supply chain, full traceability, and strong controls across the border in your suppliers. So that allows you to reduce your percentage checks for identification and physical controls. For high goods, though, that's not the case. Live animals, full requirements across the board. Photos of health certificates, pre-notification, document identification, physical controls, all required for high-risk goods. Now, considerations when you're importing SPS goods. So preparation, like any other customs movement where you're moving goods under customs control, it's important to understand, do you have all the prerequisite information to import these goods? So most importantly for SPS goods, do you have the accurate certificates of origin? Do you have adequate traceability controls? Are you confident in the traceability controls if asked by the authorities? Do you have the accurate HS code? That's important because that identifies the goods. That identifies exactly what the goods are. As many as you will know, you can have very similar commodity codes where the last 2 digits will change between frozen and fresh. That could be the difference between moving between risk categories. So it's very important to have the correct HS code. As well, are you an approved exporter? Can you issue health certificates? So very important to be prepared in order to submit SPS goods. Again, once you identify the preparation, you then risk classify them goods and apply the requirements as stated. You need to be able to coordinate the exporter as well. This is important. Where you have your different national authorities, both in, for example, the EU and the UK, there might be different regulations. They're very similar at the moment, but it could change quite drastically in the future. So it's quite important to know that the exporter should be aware of what's the requirements from DEFRA and APHA in the UK, because it's their information they're going to be providing you or the UK importer that's going to be submitted to the authorities. So it's quite important to coordinate the exporter to ensure the information is sufficient. Consultation and alignment, again, this comes like any other customs movement to ensure that the goods are being moved, where they're being moved, at what date, to ensure this all aligns with the information provided. And again, pre-notification. So this is a mandatory requirement for high and medium and the simplified for low on the IPAFs and Peach system. This can be done by the importer or it can be done by an authorized agent. So picking up to the last section, sort of other border requirements. So the safety and security declarations, again, sort of the last deadline within the BTOM. So this has been introduced on the 31st of October 2024, and it is actually becoming a mandatory requirement to move goods in out the UK, also out the UK. So originally this was going to be 37 planned fields in one of the earlier versions of the BTOM. After the sort of industry consultation, they reduced this down to 20 mandatory fields. However, you can move potentially the requirement to provide 28 fields, conditional depending on the type of goods, the type of movement. For example, if it's unaccompanied, there'll be an additional requirement to provide a field there. And then there are optional fields all the way up to 37. Now, I didn't include everything here, just provided you sort of the mandatory data fields. I would encourage anyone who wants to know more about this to go to the gov.uk page. If you simply type in safety and security declarations, they've got all the annexes there, splits all the requirements down, explanation for what each field represents and what's required. So I think it's Annex 1 or Annex A, if I remember. So I encourage anyone to go and look at that if you want to know more about that. So moving on to the closely aligned to the safety and security declarations is the ICS2. Now, I'm not going to go into incredible detail. The ICS2 is the phases are fairly complicated coming into phase 3, but phase 1 was introduced back in 2021 for air express and postal air. And then phase 2 is the general cargo and postal. So phase 3 is quite important because this is going to move into maritime. So this is the requirement to provide, essentially, well, I should give a background on the ICS2 very quickly. So the ICS2 is the import control system. It's essentially a cargo pre-departure system. So it's going to be used within the EU as well as Switzerland and Norway. So it's the requirement for any goods to move into them countries. Essentially, the system's collecting data for all goods entering into the EU. One, for safety and security purposes, not only from a commercial perspective, but also from a public health perspective. So it's essentially pre-notification of data into the EU. Now, rail and road is not going to be introduced until the 1st of April 2025. That's part of, we've called it phase 4, but it's part of phase 3, but it's such a large phase, we should really be separated. So this has been introduced next year, or 1 year's time. So any goods moving across rail and road will require an ICS2 notification. So the key changes and risks to be aware of ICS2. So very similar to the safety and security declarations of the UK, it's going to become mandatory. Your goods will not move without an ICS2 notification. So there's additional requirements as you would provide today. So, for example, the requirement to provide customs data with an ICS2, so an ENS. So HS code, description of goods, and the importer's EORI are good examples of that. There's a requirement for traders to be connected to the European single trader interface. Again, not a large uplift, but there's a requirement for to link into IC systems. There's also the possibility for customers to actually request information based on the filing of an ENS. Again, very different way we used to do customs. Borders, customs, and sort of safety and security was connected but separate in a sense, and now they're being sort of more aligned under ICS2 as well as UK safety and security declarations. So again, increased independency between the ENS, the entry summary declaration, and the customs declarations, something to be aware of. Anything submitted in the ENS is going to be considered for risk assessment for customs movements. This can create the inability to import goods into the EU if you're not accurately providing ICS2 checks or not providing ICS2 data for checks. So these can be held until you provide the correct data, and if found non-compliant, then goods will not enter the EU. And as I stated before, and across the points noted, the ENS is becoming a prerequisite for customs declaration. It is essentially becoming part of the customs movement. So that's covering all the areas. That's covering all the customs areas. And I'm going to move into the offering that we have in house here. So I'm going to pass over to Renaud just to give a quick introduction, and then we'll give you a quick demo, and you'll be able to see what we're working with.
Yes, thank you very much, Jack. So there, as part of the new services offering of the group, there is a strong emphasis now we put on the simplification and for everything related to Brexit and paperwork. So we are now in a position to offer to all Eurotunnel clients, and even beside, two kinds of services: the ones pure custom services, which are linked to the goods, and the formalities related to the vehicle and the trailers. And we are very pleased to introduce a new offering that is now available via LeShuttle Freight portal, which is called Border Pass Easy, which is a border pass that is managed for the whole year. And in addition to creating the border pass, we will provide the GMR, the safety and security declarations, and the creation of the logistic envelope. And all this will remove some of the burden for the whole year. And this is, I would say, as of today, available to any Eurotunnel clients and integrated in the portal. So the information regarding the crossing and the trailers, etc., are already there, and the rest is managed by the service and the team in charge of this. This service is, I would say, it's a premium version of Border Pass. It's an add-on that will be invoiced with a price starting at £8 per Border Pass Easy. It's a kind of starting point as we are starting to commercialize this service. And in addition to that, there's of course the full range of custom services that are also available to Eurotunnel clients, and that can be combined with this Border Pass Easy to have really the full range of formalities and paperwork managed for you. We'll show you how it works. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Everything is managed on a portal, and for the whole year, on the operating teams, the dispatchers, etc., it's pretty straightforward. And Jack will go a bit more into the details and show you how it works effectively.
Yeah, so hopefully some of the elements I've described in the regulation updates you'll be able to transfer into what we're trying to do here. So it's quite simple, really. If anyone who's has an account with LeShuttle or booked a crossing with LeShuttle, it's as simple as logging into your account online. Once you're logged into your account, it's then as easy as selecting the booking that you have assigned or you've booked in for a crossing. You're then able to select the Border Pass Easy service via a simple tab there. Inside the Border Pass Easy portal, you then just upload your customs formalities and all your documents, MRNs, etc. and that is then validated via our team, who then creates a customs file per crossing. So it's all there in one portal, in one tab. The crossing formulation is then generated and added to the file, and then essentially created for you. So we create the GMR, the ENS, the envelope logistic. So it's all there, all in one, submitted via the data presented in the portal. And then, of course, at the end, you have your border pass, and this border pass encompasses all the information required to make a border crossing. So there is a video here I'm just going to walk you through, just so you get a sense of what I was discussing there. So here you are inside the portal, and you requested a border pass easy for a crossing, simple as pressing the button. You then pick whether it's loaded or unloaded, quite important for customs purposes. So then you can see then it's all your information here at the top for the crossing, linked to, for example, the number plate, the book and transport. The simple then is important your customs formalities documents. So it's simple drag and drop, or you can select documents. So, for example, the goods being moved here is a classification document, for example. So you can import these goods, also import these documents. It doesn't have to just be documents as well. You can actually use references. So if you have an SAD number, an export or an import number, you can put that in as well. So then once you've imported that, you then just select progress, formalize the border pass easy order. This then becomes a pending request submitted to an agent, a Sherpass agent. And you can check for the, as you can see, green, red, and orange. You can check for the status. So once it's been treated, it then actually creates all the information. So I'll just quickly pause here. You'll see once you've actually submitted all that data and it's been treated by an agent, we then generate all the required documents: the GMR, the logistic envelope, and then your border pass, and also, of course, the ENS. You can see on the right as well. You can actually track and follow in a timeline on how that's progressing. If there's generally any other issues, the agent will reach out directly to the requestor in order to. So if there's a document that hasn't come through formatted correctly, or if there's missing information, you're reached out to. Yep. So then you can view all these documents, and they're all created. So these are all downloaded, PDF'd, and they're also available within the portal itself. So you can look at all the references. So it's very simple, all in one portal, all available by transport by booking. Once it's done, then just close the folder, and then the goods are ready to move. So really as simple as that. On top of the border pass, you then also have the customs pass. So of course the border pass covers all your border formalities. And then you have your customs pass, which of course will cover all your customs formalities. So as I picked up before, all the requirements for SPS checks, your IPAF declarations, for example, support for health documents. So these can all be managed via our customs pass. We have then customs clearances end to end, so import, export, transit, both from the EU side and the UK side. So that's can be managed entirely. Then of course you've got EU customs clearances. You've got the operations and assistance. So if you need assistance with data entry, real-time update information. Access to clerks for inspections, for example, on site. So we, for example, at Sevington or any border control post or port. We also do cash advances as well, for example, like duties via deferment account, or inspection fees, border control post fees. So all of that can be done all essentially in the background, and it's all invoiced via one contract on one invoice. You then have our compliance and consulting arms. And then if there's a requirement, if you have a requirement for a particular supply chain, and you want help assisting with how to implement that, if you need UK VAT number, if you need assistance with what your Incoterms mean, anything and everything with regards to compliance and consulting, we have the expertise in house to assist with that. It's important, this all comes under one digital platform, Sherpass. So it's all inside one pass. It's all connected via APIs to EU authorities and UK authorities, as well as EU and UK brokers signed. And then it also can be API to your own systems as well. So fairly straightforward application there. We also cover as well fiscal representation, which is of course a large issue for EU and UK traders trading cross border. So we're able to provide a solution for fiscal representation as well. So that's the customs pass in a nutshell. I think our Q&A session is up next. So I don't know if we've submitted them on the right. Let me just quickly have a look. So Christine Ray, so SNS, so are the safety and security declarations submitted per shipment or per trailer? So I believe it's per trailer. The safety and security declaration has to detail everything that's inside them goods. So I believe it's per trailer. I may have to double check that though, but I'm sure it's per trailer. So Adam's put, is the change of duty deferment account payment date only for SFD processes or in general? So from what I understand, that's in general for all duty deferment payments. So not just related to your simplified processes, but also your full imports into duty deferment as well. So 15th to the 16th. Christian's put, if you create the GMR, how will the declarant be made aware of any issues? So completely directly reach out. So we have agents working in-house. They will treat your documents. If any errors pop up at any point, if this comes to the GMR, the ENS, the envelope logistic, they reach out directly to the customer. So when you set up your account, you normally put a contact detail. And we can reach out directly. We have all the references to the truck, so we're able to, quickly fix them errors. If it's a formatting error, it's generally as simple as, can you provide this in this format, or we can try to change the format ourselves. If it's actually a data issue, then yes, we'll reach out directly to fix that. All this needs to be done prior to the goods boarding the Channel Tunnel, and then the shuttle service. So yeah, be made out, be directly contacted. I don't know if there's any other. Paul has put, is there any additional cost for the border pass easy? So there is. So it was on the screen, and I can quickly go back a couple. It's £8 for the border pass easy, which includes all them documents. So when the when these mandatory requirements are being put into place, it's quite a cheap solution to have all them goods, have all them declarations done in one simple portal. There's a question about our partners in the EU. We can probably follow up on that. Probably you can follow up with email on the questions there. From we'll note that down and follow up on that. The Helen, so if you're carrying photosanitary items, so SPS items, and you use the Easy Border Pass and Customs Pass, would you still be required to go to Civet for clearance as we do now? Yes, I believe so. The border pass makes the administration of the border crossing simple. It doesn't change the requirements from a regulatory perspective. It just it avoids the need to have multiple different suppliers with multiple different contracts, submissions, all for one, and multiple submissions for all for one movement. So we're trying to simplify that all into one portal. The requirements when you enter the EU or enter the UK would still remain the same. If you're moving high risk goods or you're moving medium risk goods and they're selected for physical controls, for example, you still need to go to the border control post. It doesn't alleviate the risks of identity and traceability and origin checks from the BTOM. I think that's all the questions we have. Yes. So thanks all. Our contact information is right there. So please, if you have any questions regarding any of the information that we've gone through in the presentation, please just forward them over to the emails there, or get in touch with your account manager at LeShuttle. If you have any inquiries, please get in touch, and we're more than happy to have an initial conversation. Well, let's just say thanks all. Have a nice afternoon, and for everyone in the UK, have a nice bank holiday. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.